afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today. It's Alyssa Corum and Justin Nielsen here. And on today's show, we're going to be taking a look at Regeneron as well as Clorox and Campbell's. But before we get to that, let's take a look at the major indexes. Here you can see the chart of the NASDAQ. We saw across the board gains of 6% or more. So, Justin, do you think we're finally starting to potentially see a bottom here?
You know what? It's still way too early to tell because,
Right.
this didn't even recover half of the distance that we lost yesterday. So this is still, it's not even an inside day because even though we started with a limit up situation overnight, and that's where the futures are kind of pinned at a 5% maximum. They're not allowed to trade above that until the market opens. But we had that overnight, and then when we opened, there was immediate weakness going into it, and we were actually negative for part of the day. In fact, we were building on the losses, the historic losses that we saw yesterday. It was the biggest percentage drop that the NASDAQ composite had ever seen in its history. So now what we're looking at is this is just what we call day one of the rally. And even this did not surpass the highs of yesterday, which were well below the close of the previous day.
Right. And as you mentioned, we did see a little bit of a decline in the session before. We got a boost on that
Yep.
White House press conference, stimulus measures, updates about the rollout of all the testing. So sounds like the more positive news flow we can get, the better. But companies from a variety of industries are getting hit pretty hard because of this crisis.
Yeah, and we're going to start seeing some of the economic data, start rolling out to show the effects of some of this. Not only that, but we also have the coronavirus cases to deal with as well. And as those numbers come out each day showing that the number is increasing, what people are going to be really paying attention to is the rate of that increase. Everyone expects it to increase, but is that rate increasing, or are we able to slow that down, doing what everyone is calling flattening the curve?
Right. Well, now let's take a look at a couple of stocks that are seeing a positive reaction to the coronavirus pandemic, starting off with Regeneron, which gained about 11.5% today. It's been holding up extremely well. And of course, investors are hoping that Regeneron can have considerable impact when it comes to finding a solution to the coronavirus illnesses.
Exactly. And there's a number of companies that are in play here that are, you're seeing a lot of biotechs that are showing some strength. All the stocks that I chose today are stocks that are at new highs. But let me just be very clear, that does not mean that you should be going out and buying any of these. You'll notice that a lot of these have a lot of volatility right now. And that's really what we're seeing a lot of. So for a lot of people, it's just best to kind of stay clear of all of this and not try and find those winners amongst the many, many losers. Those are the needles in the haystack right now. But with Regeneron, one of the things that's interesting about this company is this is not a small company. This is a company that does have experience with combating a lot of these different viruses. In fact, one of the things that they, were very instrumental in is coming up with, for Ebola, and how to combat the Ebola virus. And, some of the things that they've learned from that process, particularly taking a virus or a partial virus, putting it into what they call magical mice, and getting some antibodies from those mice that can be used to combat the coronavirus. Now, that's not necessarily a vaccine. Maybe it's on the way to a vaccine. But more importantly, that's something that people can be using as kind of a treatment, while the vaccine comes out. This is something that can maybe help people avoid getting into a situation where they need a respirator or a ventilator. And that's one of the things that Italy is really dealing with right now, is just that their healthcare system is so overwhelmed. So again, anything we can do to kind of flatten that curve a little bit to make some of these things not as bad for the cases that do get severe and critical, that can definitely help.
Definitely. And now let's flip our attention on over to this Spider Consumer Staples ETF briefly, because we do want to talk about Clorox and Campbell's
Right.
benefiting from all of the buying and hoarding of supplies by consumers. So, some investors are
And
saying, hey,
the thing is, Yeah, the consumer staples group was one of the top groups. That was moving today. Utilities was up there as well. And again, just because you see a group moving one day does not mean that this is an all clear signal. You can see that the XLP is well below its 200-day moving average line. And as we switch over to Clorox, here's one that you usually expect to be one of your slower movers, and this has just gotten really volatile. And you can see that it kind of had that breakout shortly after its, right around its last earnings report. But now it's, really kind of moving a lot, all the way down to its 200-day moving average line, and then right back up. It's moving just in a very unusual pattern from its norm. And so you just have to ask yourself, is that the kind of volatility that you want to deal with? This is not a company that is known for having very strong, sales growth and
Right.
earnings growth right now. It had a lot of negative quarters. Now, the expectation, of course, is that as people get more cleanliness in their lives, that this is something that some habits that will be kind of sticking with for a while, for the near foreseeable future. So yes, this is something that can make an impact. How much of an impact? How much does that do to the sales and earnings? That remains to be seen. And that's the case with a lot of these coronavirus plays. Either on the upside or the downside, there's just still a lot of uncertainty as to what the repercussions are going to be here, either on the good side or the bad side.
Yes, only time will tell. And quickly, let's also take a look at Campbell's. A similar story here, not a strong track record of earnings or sales growth, which is what we like to
Right.
see, but and a lot of volatility lately. Today to the upside with a 9% gain.
And of course, these are companies that are making new highs. All of these companies are making new highs. So of course, you see those relative strength lines that are absolutely screaming right now. And the composite ratings are also very strong. These are all stocks that are in the 90s with their composite ratings, but also understand that the relative strength rating is a big component of that composite rating. And so they are getting the benefit of that relative strength rating just really soaring in a lot of these cases. So make sure that you're looking at the whole package here, not to
Yes.
just use the packaged food kind of symbology here, but the fact is, you have to look at what are the earnings, what have those earnings been in the past, because we don't know quite yet what those earnings are going to be in the future and what kind of revenues they're going to see. And a lot of people are trying to guess ahead, but as you see, that the market is still trying to price a lot of these things out, and you can be in for a lot of extra volatility as a result.
Yeah, that is definitely true. And make sure you are tuning into IBD Live every morning where the conversation will for sure continue. You can check out investors.com/IBD Live for that. And we are actually running a special right now,
That's right.
3 weeks free, Justin.
Yes, it's part of the St. Patrick's Day celebration here. So even though a lot of us are at home and doing our thing from here, we're still trying to make sure that we're helping people out as much as possible. And IBD Live is definitely one of those things that a lot of people have been saying it really has helped with their impulse control. Because what we've really been recommending a lot is just kind of sitting on your hands and being patient during this time. This is not the time to be trying to pick the bottom. This was one day that was up, but we saw that on Friday and it immediately went into new lows. So don't be a hero out there.
Right. And when it comes to identifying a proper follow through day and the appropriate measures to take, if and when that does happen, again, this is the source to get the information and analysis that you can trust, everyone. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.